Hello, 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 beautiful people. Welcome back to an episode of the USL show. We took a week off as is tradition in the off season. We didn't mean to, but it just happened that way. And hey, we have a lot of fun stuff to cover today. We are going to go over the US Open Cup and the new format. Do we like the new format? Kinda, sorta, maybe not. It's complicated. We're going to just kind of broadly gesture at US soccer and say, is this good or bad? Maybe. And then we're going to go ahead and talk about a little bit about the Super League is coming back. The Miami FC has a coach, shocker. And then who did Luka get traded for? And what's the USL equivalent? And finally, we're going to end with our 90s, 50s, 10s, which is our 90%, our 50%, and our 10%. But more important than me, Phil, baby, welcome back. How are you?
I'm good. It is good to be back. It was sort of a whirlwind start to 2025. So I did a bunch of travel for work and all of that, which I am now on the down slope of. So I'm feeling good, feeling refreshed, feeling not so good about my team. But we are, we're here, and I am excited to chat with you all about everything we get as we gear up for what we're like a month away now from a new season.
Yeah, that's all right. Just do what we all do and just skeet through it. Am I right? All right, Ryan, how are you?
Yeah, Phil, I'm with you. It's been a 2025 that makes you feel like you've aged 2 decades in the span of what 2 weeks is feel like. But other than that, I'm doing well, wearing a New Mexico kit, fresh off of their USL Championship Waffle House title. And if you're curious what that reference is to, just go back through my Blue Sky account. But that was something rather fun to send out there.
The fact that New Mexico and Legion don't play this year, I think it's just gross. That's fine. All right, John, how are you?
Well, now I'm reckoning with the unbalanced calendar again, so you're really throwing me off. But yeah, I'm recovering from the flu and trying to ignore the news of the world. So good week for me.
Good for you. And before we get into absolutely everything, we want to go ahead and thank our wonderful, beautiful patrons. We have Ryan Smelter, Matt Capiel, Timothy Meadows, who is currently on his knees in a Kroger. Andrew Townsley, Oliver Hedgehog, Kunal Patel, MOS, NF Reg 30, Tim Knox, Rian Lacara, Stephen Howard, Jeremy Churchman, Alberto Aguilar, Noah Telford, Michael Fuchs, Joshua Duder, John Fuller, Christopher Cohn, Frank Anthony, John Hunt, and Harry Austin. Thank you guys supporting us and helping us do what we do. So let's go ahead and talk first things first about the US Open Cup. Those draws are officially going to be announced very, very soon. So that's going to be really exciting. But there were some massive changes where if you are a USL Championship club, you did not make the playoffs, you are immediately joining the first round alongside the teams who are semi-pro qualified and the third tier teams. Meanwhile, if you are a team that finished in a playoff spot, if I have this correct, you are making it automatically into the third round. So there's been a big emphasis put on to these teams to make the playoffs. Not all MLS teams are in this, so it is what it is. But, there are more MLS teams added. Is it perfect? No. But personally, I love the added pressure of making the playoffs. Yeah, 66% of teams make the playoffs. So you best not miss unless you want to possibly go to a semi-pro club in the first round and maybe even the second.
That for me is like the best thing about this format is the added jeopardy of the regular season. Just like the fact that results have consequences, and like although you can talk about sort of sporting merit and all of that stuff across US soccer, the reality is like adding that into this format it just makes everything feel a little bit more consequential. And personally, as someone whose team struggled last year, I'm glad that they have to like suffer a little bit in the cup and have to get over the hump of an amateur team in the first round, like to continue. And, given our history in that competition, I don't think it'll necessarily go well, but all that being said, I love the added jeopardy. I do think that it's still, there's a little bit of the frog boiling in terms of US soccer permitting Major League Soccer to not participate in the competition fully. So I think there is a little bit of that where it's like it's now become the norm, where it was like huge outrage last year. And so that for me is the only downside, is the fact that I think we are kind of now in a normalized era of MLS gets to choose, like pick and choose who participates in this competition, which is the downside. But overall, I would say, like, given what we've got, I'd say it's a win of a format.
Yeah, my big takeaway that I've enjoyed from this new format for the Open Cup this year is that for certain teams in USL, for certain teams in MLS, they've already been seeded as hosts for the round that they're entering. So now we can actually have these teams added into their schedule, added into their season ticket plans, tell fans ahead of time, hey, we're hosting this game on this date, or at least this week, and start planning for it, and they can start hyping it up and advertising it ahead of time. Like, I think I even saw within MLS that they have to use their primary venue unless all other options are being exhausted. So it's putting the onus back on the clubs to, hey, start promoting this and start treating it like a truly important competition, which I think is certainly a win.
Muted.
Wow. Yeah, slick as always. This is why I'm a GOAT podcaster. But I think that's an incredibly important point you're making there, Ryan, in terms of having that awareness, being able to market the tournament. Because you've seen traditionally with the attendance issues and everything, it's not a lack of interest in the US Open Cup. It's the fact that you're going at midweek, getting short notice for teams to be able to market these sorts of games as an event that people should care about. And I think the amateur change honestly kind of adds that special sauce as well. I know in the past when I've talked to people around the league, there's a real sense that that's something that can unify the game from the grassroots level on up. And it kind of puts the onus on clubs to raise their game and come in at a certain level to show off to fans that, yes, it's an amateur team, but it's still a product worth respecting. So I think that's something that I enjoy seeing. Overall, would I like to see more MLS participation? Of course. But I think by and large, the steps that they've taken with this are about as good as you could have hoped for, realistically.
Before we broadly gesture at U.S. soccer, any final thoughts at the U.S. Open Cup?
I just think it'll be really interesting to see how the draw pans out. I know, Kaylor, you were talking early on, and obviously I think with these amateur teams joining in the first round, it is going to typically shake out sort of geographically and regionally. So I am excited to see how it goes. But I'm also, I think this format does lend itself to a couple of first round upsets too, given the amount of fixtures that the USL teams are participating in. They're going to want to rotate. So I think some of these amateur teams too will get a clear shot, like we saw last year with a couple of League Two and other teams making runs. So just an exciting time to look ahead to the cup competition.
And selfishly for me here in the Carolinas, they have numerous teams just beyond MLS, USL here. Shout out to Soda City in it. Asheville is a big one. Appalachian FC as well. So there are numerous Carolina teams just selfishly for my distance. And then everyone's favorite El Farolito is back in the cup this year as well.
The classic. By the way, go check out thecup.us/US Open Cup on Twitter, Blue Sky, because they do still post updates. So there are a lot of teams that switched leagues that aren't going to be involved in the league this year. They have the full breakdown on that. So in case you're wondering why there are some massive semi-pro clubs who are not going to be participating, it's because they are not allowed to, because they switched from NPSL to USL League 2. So if you're wondering where some of those clubs are, that's the explanation. Let's just kind of broadly gesture at U.S. soccer, where it is deemed that, MLS won the case and they basically NASL lost. This was after my favorite part. And also the only part of the trial that I ever heard about was that the, NASL commissioner was just tweeting from a burner account, which that's the only part of the trial I heard. And when I read that, I said, well, they lost. And yes, they did. I really don't know much about it, so I'm going to leave any opinions to people who actually did some research on this.
I mean, if you look at the legal reasoning behind the case, essentially the jury kind of focused on the first barrier that the NASL needed to get over, which was like differentiating D1 and D2 soccer as like meaningfully different markets, which ultimately the NASL couldn't even clear that hurdle, which probably is more of a sign of like they never had a case in the first place than something that indicates we actually got like a relevant decision out of this. I never really took this seriously as a story, if we're being honest at all. Like, yes, it was fun, but the idea that there was some level of collusion between US Soccer and the USL to keep down a league that was terribly run was just so asinine to begin with that like this being the outcome is no surprise.
I think the other aspect too is that, and this is the more generous side to NASL certainly, but I think like legal precedent around sports in America suggested that there was never going to be any sort of like case around this, because like, without being too cynical about the whole thing, like collusion is essentially legal in sports like business in the United States. The NFL, the way the NFL and MLS operate are straight up like exceptions to like antitrust laws. And so I just think that they were never going to win because there was no precedent to suggest that the courts would ever rule a monopoly in when it comes to a sports league. Like I just don't think that they were ever going to, and that's even taking out other legal avenues that they were taking in terms of, and the barriers that John alludes to that they couldn't clear.
The biggest winner of this entire situation is Jeffrey Kessler's billable hours.
Laughing his way to the bank.
He probably will earn enough money that he could just restart the NASL on his own.
Recreating the
Well, I mean, I think the thing you've seen people talking about is what's going to happen with the Cosmos brand, which, hey, I would love to see some form of that make its way into the USL.
Absolutely. Well, unless anybody has anything else on this. Anybody? Nope. Okay. Next week, or this weekend, excuse me, we are back with the Super League, where the Sun are taking on Fort Lauderdale. So that is super exciting. If you haven't been paying attention to the Super League offseason, this is technically not an offseason. It's a break. So we are still looking at teams who are in certain standings, in which I am going to present this question. Grant, it's hard to tell because there's been a lot of moving and shaking going on with these rosters, so it's kind of hard to tell. There's been a lot of great players who have moved on or retired, which is interesting. But right now, as the standings are, with everything being played, we are at the winter break. We have Brooklyn, Dallas, Carolina, Fort Lauderdale, Tampa Bay, DC Power, Lexington, and Spokane, where I'm just going to open up the question: do we think that this table is going to change any by the end of this break, or by the end of this half?
I mean, it's definitely a long season left to go. And if you think about the fact that there are still only, 6 or 7 points between DC and the cut line with Fort Lauderdale. And especially given, I think, the way Carolina kind of wavered at the end of the fall portion of the year, and Fort Lauderdale and Tampa Bay came on quite strong. There's still plenty of action yet to go, and especially given the moves we saw over the winter. Some of it, players moving back to the NWSL. Some of it, like Dallas signing Lexi Nissimo, who, I mean, that is a big story in and of itself that we probably ought to talk about at some point. And so I think that this first game, frankly, like Tampa Bay, Fort Lauderdale, is going to mean a lot when it comes to the final standings. These are two teams right on the bubble, two teams that came on strong, like I said, at the end of the fall portion of the year. So, yeah, I think there's going to be at least one team that drops out.
And I like the idea, like with this sort of break in the middle, it's given teams a chance to do a lot of business. And there have been a lot of moves, for better for some teams, for worse for others. But I think there is still plenty of jeopardy in the rest of the season, even though we saw sort of this early stratification, sort of a top 5 emerged, I guess you could say, where you had these teams. But it's still like a 6-point gap only to the like from Tampa Bay down. So it's like there's tons and tons of time for these teams that didn't have the best fall to turn it around in the spring.
Yeah, and I'll at least go out on a limb and say that I think maybe not a hot take, but Brooklyn will probably finish the year as number one in the regular season. And I guess the one that's going to be most interesting to me is just how Lexington, a team who has tied for the most goals in the league right now in 20 with Dallas at 7th in the league, kind of how they return for the second portion of the season, whether that helps them kind of climb up the table or if they continue the Tottenham Hotspur school for scoring a lot without much improvement in the table.
I think on the Brooklyn side, when I mentioned kind of retirements, Isabel Cox retired, who was a pretty significant part of this team. She obviously wasn't like the all and out goal scorer, but I mean, she came up at big times. I think she had two game winners, 3 goals total. I mean, she was definitely a contributor, so that's definitely something to pay attention to. I also think that this break, you mentioned the break, Phil, teams like DC Power, who first ever firing in league history, you'll never sing that. They get a full break to kind of restructure the roster and actually get some time under the new manager without having to lose games in the process. I think that's going to be really interesting to see how teams tackle these kinds of breaks, because you get a chance in the middle of the season to maybe right some wrongs, and maybe it leads to more bullish moves during the season of getting rid of a manager who doesn't work because there's a break to fix it.
Relative to the Izzy Cox thing, obviously she was like a fantastic player, but she only started 7 of Brooklyn's 14 games. And if you think about some of the talent they've got there, like Salma Amani, a bona fide Moroccan international, barely got minutes as she was kind of settling in. So they've got attacking midfielders. I think Luana Gravies could frankly move over to the wing and just start Dana Sheriff at the 9 spot. Like the depth that Brooklyn has across that kind of midfield attacking unit, basically everything in front of the defense, makes me feel like they'll be all right. And they're so system driven as well. So yeah, feeling good about them in first place, and then kind of anything goes beneath it.
Final thoughts before we go on to our trade talk? No. All right. So if you were not on social media, or if you were me who woke up at 5 a.m. and got the notification and just could not believe what I was reading, Luka Doncic was traded from the Mavericks to the Lakers for Anthony Davis and a first-round pick in like 4 years or something like that. And to which there's a lot of conversation of, is this like collusion? I can't believe they got rid of Luka because he's fat. Did they think they actually had Zion Williamson? Like, who knows? I kind of just had this thought, and everybody was posting it on social medias. Explain this in baseball terms, explain this in NFL terms, explain this in USL terms. Well, that's what we are here to do. So if we are trying to do this kind of example, we are looking for a player in their prime, still up and coming, about to reach their prime, one of the best players in the league, for another player who's really, really good, but clearly on the decline. Possibly even different types of players. Now, I had a thought, and this is part of it's a little bit Homer, part of it's a little bit just recency bias. But my kind of thought process was 2024, Nick Marcanic being traded for Enzo Martinez. 2 very good players. Both of them are going to be producers, different types of players, one clearly on the decline, one clearly on the incline. That was kind of where my head went.
I like it. I was kind of trying to include like the team context into it. So if you think about the Lakers, that's a team that's got like the bona fide superstar in LeBron, who he's still got it, but he's not going to carry the load on his own. For me, there's kind of a Sacramento comparison there. When you've got Roro, that's the guy, that's the legendary presence. In this case, they're dealing somebody who's kind of like hanging his hat on the defensive impact in Anthony Davis. That's a Danny Vitiello for me. Now, if you're talking Dallas, that's a team on the come up. They've got an offensive player, a distributor who's really like carrying the load. Took Dallas to the finals last year. Not really a one-to-one in the USL, but I think the best fit for me was someone like a Valentin Noel, like a star distributor for a team on the rise with that real arc. So Vidiello for Noel doesn't really capture the age thing, but I think in terms of like the team context and the magnitude of the players being moved was the best thing that I was able to come up with.
Okay.
I think it's like if El Paso Locomotive actually got something for Diego Luna.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Diego Luna moving to Real Salt Lake and a good defensive player going back the other way would have been. So I'm not sure if that says something, but yeah. No, I was thinking to is like there was somebody with Anthony Davis. I was thinking about similarly about the defensive contributions, and someone like sort of Forrest Lasso was coming to mind of like a guy like on the like later in his career, like physically maybe not at the same level as a player moving the other way, but like so that's that was one where I was thinking maybe he's the Anthony Davis, and but yeah, John, I like I like the Sacramento angle for the Lakers because it feels fitting.
Forrest Lasso for Jorge Hernandez was my backup, so yeah, glad we're on the same page there. Yeah,
I tried to shoot for a Forrest Lasso personally.
Yeah, I was echoing Kaler's sentiment with Nick Marcanic, and it would be if Charleston was willing to sell Nick Marcanic for a very little return and to say we're bringing back Dane Kelly as our replacement to come in for him, who ironically, Dane Kelly, born on February 9th, 1991, is the next day on February 10th is Max Christie's birthday.
Have to work in the Max Christie angle.
Can't forget. And who's the random Utah team that we can just throw in that just gets things? Who can we just say you get stuff?
I guess that is the Real Salt Lake.
Real Salt Lake.
Oh my God, we got Diego Luna.
Yeah. and to Nicholas's point, I know they did actually get compensation. I think in relative terms, I think we can say that it was not enough, especially given the relative trajectories of the organization since then. But yeah,
sure. All right. Any final Luka Doncic thoughts? No,
it's very rare that a sports transaction transcends the sport.
Yeah.
Like that was weird. Like Luka Doncic being like pop culture news is kind of wild. Like it's like the Grammys were going on and Luka Doncic was being talked about.
I saw the Luka Doncic news break on r/baseball. And I was just like, wait, what? Someone had asked, like, what's the baseball equivalent of this? And I was like, I'm sorry, what?
So I've been, as long as I can remember, I've been a Mavericks fan just because when I was like really young, I was just obsessed with Dirk Nowitzki. I just thought the fadeaway was just, I couldn't believe it. So I just became obsessed with them. And when I woke up that morning and I saw the Athletic notification, like I've never been so wide awake as soon as I've woken up in my entire life. I could not believe what I was reading. Just unreal. I mean, just the quotes are funny to me. Like there's the press conference of the Mavs GM and
I never do anything scary.
Jason Kidd. And then Jason Kidd just wants to kill him. And I don't know. It just really cracks me up. Everything about it I mean, and now that I'm over it, I'm not even over it. I want to say I'm done with the Mavs at this point, but it does just make me laugh. I don't know. All right. Let's go ahead and move on to our 90s, 50s, 10s. Now, for people who are not familiar with the concept, Ryan, you're the one that brought it up to us like three years ago at this point. So break it down for us.
Yeah, so this has been somewhat of a tradition here on the USL show. Idea came from the Formula One subreddit. So we now have basically we send out 3 predictions that we have for the year, not necessarily predictions that we think are guaranteed that are to happen, but our 3 ideas are you are predicting something that has a 90% chance of occurring. Then you have a prediction that you think has a 50% chance of occurring. And then we sprinkle in a 10% long shot chance of occurring as well, just to kind of make it something fun for us to keep track of for the season.
Well, on that, we are going to start off with our 90s. These are our near locks. So who wants to get us started? Let's see, John.
Okay, I'm being
Yeah.
volunteered. Okay, I feel very confident about this, that Monterey Bay misses the playoffs. This is a team that I've been watching the offseason news come in. Lots of teams in the USL are zigging in one direction, and Monterey is very much zagging in the other. Like, they've added almost no players with bona fide USL championship experience. On top of that, they missed the playoffs already. They had a bottom 5 XG margin in the league. They're losing Tristan Treger, Maury Donor, Anthony Siaha, and they aren't starting the season with Rafael Baca. This feels like a team that's kind of Miami-ing in that they're going very young. They've got a couple of holdover pieces at least, but I just can't see a world where they've improved enough in a very strong Western Conference to get into the postseason. So, sorry to the team formerly known as Union.
Ryan?
Yeah, so sticking in the Western Conference, I've gone with my 90% prediction as both Colorado Springs and Las Vegas Lights do not return to the Western Conference final. Las Vegas Lights obviously made the hire at manager, which was something that was just more of a bold call, if you will. And then for Colorado Springs perspective, repeating as USL champions in this era is incredibly difficult. Even if you look back at the Western Conference final alone, the last time we had a team make it back-to-back appearances in the Western Conference final was San Antonio, who did it in 2021 and 2022. I think the Western Conference is going to be much improved. You're going to see a team like a New Mexico, like a Sacramento, who will be very good out there this year, that I think it just pushes Las Vegas out. And then just over the course of a long season, anything could happen with Colorado Springs, and just repeating is challenging. And I think they fall short of the Western Conference final.
Phil?
My 90% prediction is I'm gonna move away, since John went with the Monterey Bay angle. I'm gonna save mine for the 10%. Just I'll flip mine around. So 90% Gaston Madoni does not take Miami FC to the playoffs. Brand new coach, Argentinian, exciting times down on South Beach.
Sebastian Blanco in.
Yeah, anything is possible. I think we've got another long season down in Miami. Unfortunately for those guys, there just has not been enough movement, not enough of the they're sticking with essentially the same exact strategy that got them like one of the worst ever seasons. Like,
we will be returning to this point.
So I wanted to shout out the new manager bounce when they inevitably get a draw in week 1.
My 90% is going to be that a USL League One expansion team is going to make the playoffs, which doesn't seem like it's that outlandish until you realize across both the championship and League One, I think since the championship era started, there's only been 3 or 4 expansion teams to ever make the playoffs in their first year. It's really hard to do. But when you look at just Westchester, you look at Naples, you look at a little bit of what Pine are doing, AV Alta, and Texoma is alive. We can repeat, Texoma is alive.
Got Jorge Corrales and Preston Kilwin. Like, they're genuinely like a good defense. Yeah.
Yeah, and so like when you're looking what they're building, I think that it's a 9%, at least one makes it. And if I'm being extra bullish, and this is not my 50%, by the way, I'm thinking that maybe you could have multiple make the playoffs this year.
Okay, wait. So tell me if I'm being an idiot here.
Okay.
League One has 14 teams.
Yep.
Right.
Oh, wait.
5 of them are expansion teams.
Has Kaler actually mathed his way into not possibly being wrong?
I feel No, 6 are going to make the playoffs. I needed to just like have this accounting. But I was going to say, like, it would be incredible if of the 6 teams to not make the postseason, 5 of them were the expansion teams.
There's like literally a 90% chance of an expansion team making the playoffs.
Kayla took this literally.
And that other one, the Chattanooga Red Wolves.
I'll tell you what, that was my backup for this 90% because I think that team is going to finish dead last.
Speaking of the I just wanted to say real quick before we move on from this is you mentioned Westchester, and just wanted to say, John, the interview with Westchester did get me I would say, like, that is where my wife is from. She's like from that part of New York, and I did not take them seriously until reading that interview, where I was like, man, like they actually have a pretty clear vision of what they want to do and how they're going to do it, and biting off more than they can chew, which is like a rite of passage in American soccer, but actually recognizing it and not trying to act like it's all good, and working their way through. So very, very good piece. If you haven't checked out John's, I know I'm preaching to the choir in the chat right now, but
I think the thing with Westchester, just to kind of dip into that for a second, is like, if you're an expansion team, it's hard to know like what you're supposed to be doing. And obviously we talked a bit in the piece about how the league has some guidance for you, but you're still going to make mistakes in year one. And I think Westchester is kind of learning the media side of things as they go. It's only going to get better. But like the proactivity of Mitch reached out to me, he reached out to Alex from League One Updater and said, like, we have a story we want to tell if you guys are willing to help out. So yeah, positive signs for sure.
It's awesome.
Portland has their own documentary coming out, which is really cool. And New Mexico as well, right?
Thursday night live premiere. People around the club are encouraging, like, if you can be there for the live premiere on YouTube, they're trying to make it an event. Owner Peter Trevisani will be just chatting with people on YouTube as one does.
Nice.
So.
I'll be sure to be hate watching.
And we'd also
wanted to shout out a couple of chat 90%ers here. We've got a 90% Indy 11 doesn't make the playoffs, which feels targeted.
And a 90% El Paso doesn't make the playoffs, which also feels targeted. But hold on to that thought. We're getting there.
And then Michael would also be, as always, is pro Lexington. So yeah.
We would also be remiss if we didn't mention that Tyler Adams joining the Westchester FC ownership group as well.
Oh, that's true.
Him and Tyrod Taylor for the NFL sickos out there.
And I don't know what it is about Tyler Adams, but he's an absolute magnet for just getting beat up. When Liverpool played Bournemouth over the weekend, he like finally makes it back on the pitch. I'm like excited to see him. He's playing well, and he gets absolutely destroyed by a shot from his own player direct to the family jewels. Just like unlucky. Like, I can't find a better word for Tyler Adams than he might be the most unlucky soccer player like on the planet.
I'm looking forward to the future when we can get not just Tyler Adams's Westchester, but Timothy Weah's Brooklyn FC to meet in competition at one point soon.
Yeah.
Need that.
Okay, a 90% in the comments once more, just to turn this into a prompt. A 90% chance that a USL team makes the US Open Cup final from Eric. Which USL team is likeliest to actually do that? And don't just say Lou City, because the answer is Lou City.
You say that, but I actually think that it wouldn't be Lou City, because I think an MLS team would be more likely to take them seriously earlier. I think you'd be more likely to find someone who is slipped down slightly below that. I think an easy answer would be Sacramento, because they've done it before. I have a sneaky part of me that thinks it would be New Mexico.
They made they were second furthest advancing last year and had the away game in LA. So that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
It's going to be crucial.
I was just going to say, they've got a history of cup runs, like going back to the first season. So
for me, what would be crucial is if we can find a USL team that avoids the tough MLS sides that you could possibly draw. So you'd be picking a team from basically a geographic region where you could avoid your Atlantas, your Charlotte FCs, your Austins in there, and kind of piece your way through and just get really lucky with the draw, that if there are upsets early, that if you play a semi-professional team in a later round, that would be kind of the route that you would go through. So if that's a New Mexico who exists, or Tampa Bay?
I was going to say Tampa Bay was like literally the width of the crossbar or whatever away from beating Orlando City. And I think that matchup does like favor Tampa Bay in recent times. Like they've played MLS teams extremely close, and no Atlanta in the competition this time around. So in the Southeast, like it's pretty much Orlando and Charlotte who like you would play, which I think like, yeah.
I'd like to shout for Charleston real quick. Sorry, Kaylor, because they've got Douglas Martinez. And as we've seen historically on Sacramento, on Indy, guy is just magic for a run. So that's my very scientific opinion.
I'm also going to throw out there, if we're thinking about weaker regions for MLS. Now, I don't know how I don't have the teams who are in the U.S. Open Cup. When I'm thinking about weaker teams, though, this could just be shaping up for another Union Omaha, because Minnesota wasn't great last year. The Fire were the Fire. They still don't have Neymar. And Sporting KC was okay. Honestly, everybody around Union Omaha, just all right. They also have a path.
Sporting KC
beating El Paso in the first round.
Yeah.
El Paso's got to get past 4-0 FC or whatever. So like we've got a tall order before we can start talking about a run. We got to win a game.
All right. 50s. We ready for some 50s?
Yeah, I've got some picks here.
Okay. Well, I will start it off since I voluntold you last time. I will start us off. And my 50% is that a League One team is going to win one of their Jägermeister groups.
Love that.
I like that show.
I did that in my Backfield season preview. I said multiple would win their group. So, yeah, Omaha, Westchester. There's a lot of favorable ones. Tormento, with the draw they've got, could do it, and especially the roster they're building.
We know that Omaha is getting 2 wins over El Paso. That's like written in the stars. So that's we know you can chalk those up already.
All right.
Okay, I'm coming in with a 50 here. I'm gonna make a bold prediction that between the two of them, Jack Gurr and Ryan Spalding in Sacramento combined to contribute to more than 25 goals. That's from the wingback spots, keep in mind. Spalding is somebody who has played under Neil Collins before. He gives that team a real sense of spark on the left side. I praise Jack Gurr so much that I really don't need to repeat myself at that point. Like, just an incredible player. Cumulatively last season, they put up more than half an expected assist per game. Like, that's incredible production. So long as they're getting the finishing up top, like, I think that's attainable for them, even though it's kind of crazy to think for 2 defenders.
Ammon almost certainly has like a better season and maybe a more consistent season than he did last year, where he started very, very hot and then sort of cooled off like aggressively later in the year. So with a little bit more consistency, I think like they can certainly get a lot of return out of those wingback spots.
And I'll clarify, when I'm saying this, I mean in USL regular season play and any games in the Jägermeister Cup. So like internal league play.
USL, yeah, sure.
All right, Ryan.
This is probably going to be a little bit more me trying to manifest this, but off the heels of the news that Elijah Winder had the USL domestic transfer record of 400,000 to the LA Galaxy, and with having a larger field for the Open Cup, with having the combined Jägermeister Cup, I think we will have a 50% chance that there will be a player this season by the end of 2025 who will approach that transfer record, if not even break that record. Maybe it's more so me just trying to manifest it to happen, but I feel like with an expansion of just the tournament and more eyes being placed kind of in USL, there's going to be someone who will elevate themselves enough to get recognized from an MLS team.
We'll see what Corcoran gets from Nashville, because, I mean, that's all but confirmed. His number was already given to a trialist, so, like, almost certainly going to happen. We'll see what that number looks like. Also, just purely Legion stuff going on here. I would not be shocked if a team in MLS goes in early on Rami Zamuda. I think that's he was definitely the best player on the pitch on this last Saturday. But like I think that you could see two players right there that could approach that number. And there's obviously other young talent around the league that could definitely fetch at least approaching that number.
Nate Worth previously has had at least bids from MLS teams. You wonder if that could happen. Kind of an interesting landscape too, like given that MLS just added the cash transfers. Like you see the 2.1 number for Jack McGlynn, who's somebody who's like a bona fide USMNT player versus 400K for Winder. It's not like different stratospheres. So I think it kind of shows a certain level of respect for the USL.
All right. What about 50 for you, Phil?
So I'm going out on a limb here, but with the news that Noah Fuson re-signed a multi-year deal in Rhode Island, I'm going that Noah is going to have an all-league year and be in the USL Championship Team of the Year this year for the full season. I think we saw, especially in the back half of last year, just how potent he can be. And now that this team is like obviously returning a lot of the strong pieces that took them on that run to the final, I think Noah is going to be one of the people who really thrives in the consistency. And he's just a player that I really admired last year, and I think he'll be a key piece again for Rhode Island. But I think he'll take it to the next level in terms of production and be an all-league player.
I think he might have been the biggest first team snub last year, honestly. So given the fact that he's kind of got that chip on his shoulder, I think this Rhode Island team is going to be unreal to watch anyway. That feels like a strong argument to make. But hey, all league spots are tough to get, so I think that's why it's a good 50.
Yeah,
for sure. All right, our 10s.
Real quick, I'm shouting out the comments again. Lexington sweeping all their matches with Lou City is so spicy, and I love that.
I do love that it's a 50%, like, because I mean it's basically exactly the odds of any game, right? Like you do have a 50% chance. So yeah.
And more broadly, where are we at on this Lexington roster? As they kind of got boat raced in their last friendly, but drew Messi a week or two ago.
I think I like it. I guess where I am right now is that it's a lot of really good players and a lot of players that are brand new to Lexington. A lot of players who have never played together before, and it's a new coach. So I think there's going to be a time early on in the season, maybe about the first month, where they look like an expansion team. And I think that roughly around June, July, they're going to hit their stride and prove that they're really good. But I feel like because it's so many new players and a new coach, that it's just going to be really hard to get that continuity throughout the first few months.
Here's what I'm going to say about Lexington. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice. So
again.
Yeah, exactly. You can't shoot the shooter. So I think I think there is like Kaylor said, like names on page super good. There's a lot of players obviously like that I think extremely highly of, and I think they will be like good and will produce for Lexington. That being said, particularly in midfield, I would say it's like a lot of good names. Getting that to be a cohesive unit over a short period of time is going to be tough. And in general, I think it'll take some time. We thought that Lexington had a championship caliber squad last year, and we were deeply wrong about that. Obviously, in League One play, it will take a lot for me to like warm up to the idea of Lexington being for real, given how they fooled us last year.
And Kaylor, it's interesting that you mentioned by June and July that Lexington will really start to kind of come into their own, as the end of July, on July 26th, Lexington is hosting Louisville for that one after their initial first meeting at Lynn Family Stadium in May, and you could very well see them not looking up to par against Louisville the first time around, but the second time around could very well be a Lexington victory.
I had something and I totally lost it, and that's brutal. That is
Do
so
we-
brutal.
I boldly think that Cameron Lancaster might not be the guy at the 9 spot. Like, I think they need, because right now, given that they just loaned out Malik, Henry Scott
Henry
to
Scott,
Huntsville, yeah, they've only got Lancaster and Liotti essentially at the 9 spot. That's fine, but old-ish Cameron Lancaster and a player in Azad Liotti we've never seen do it at the championship level. The one thing I think this team really needs to address going into the year.
Yeah. All right. I'm ready for my 10.
Go for it.
This is my 10%. Now, these are sprinkles. It's not very much, right? Like, small chance, but still a chance. I have 10% that the Pittsburgh Riverhounds are going to win the Players' Shield.
Whoa.
Wow.
That's crazy.
They've done something they've never done before, which is bring in bona fide USL forwards. And like they bring back oh my gosh, what's his name? Is it Jacobson? No,
Jackson. Yeah,
Jackson.
you got it.
I was all over it. They bring back Jackson, who was a stud for them last year. Augie Williams is coming in, and he is just a goal scorer. And they're bringing back the base of their defensive midfield. Plus, they still have Dick and goal, where you're going to have a defensively solid team. And they have they have 2 players who are going to score goals for them. It's a Bob Lilly side. They're not going to concede, and they're probably going to score 1 or more now. I think there is a 10% chance that they win the Players' Shield.
I think the loss of someone like a Patrick Hogan, who really stepped up at the end of last season, is a big deal. With Rovira and Blackstock both gone at the right wing back spot and kind of no one filling that hole as of yet, I'm slightly concerned there. I think that this team will look a lot closer to the Pittsburgh we saw at the end of 2024 when they were kind of, I don't know, at the level of a team that would compete for home field advantage. But hey, at this point that's the point of the 10% prediction. Like, I love the boldness there.
I just think it's crazy that a Bob Lilly team has 4 rostered defenders a month out from the that's crazy.
I'll go with my 10%, and Julian in the chat has really echoed it. And I had said that one team does the double of winning the Jägermeister Cup and winning their respective league title this year. I wasn't so bold to say that they would do the treble to throw in an Open Cup or a Players' Shield, but I think we're going to see at least whoever wins their respective league is going to make a very good run at the Jägermeister Cup, and my 10% is that they do the double and win both.
No, actually we didn't. Well, we kind of had a double last year with Union Omaha with Players' Shield and USL Cup. Yeah, it counts. It doesn't happen very often. Because I was going to say, when I was said kinda, I was going to say we had a double with Jaeger, but that was NOCO, so I was going to correct myself. But yeah, I mean, I could see it, especially with Jägermeister and the USL Cup. I could definitely see it happening.
And those were the specific stipulations of this one, that it had to be the league title and the Jägermeister Cup. So no Jägermeister and Players' Shield.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which makes it harder.
Okay. John or Phil, who wants it?
All right, I'm going for it.
Yep, do it. I'll say
Miami's making the playoffs. Dead serious. I think there are 2 components here. One, Detroit City getting a lot worse, for my taste. I think that is a team that is going to fall out of the playoff mix this year. I don't know if I trust Hartford to improve. Loudon hasn't signed anybody but Moses Nyman, and he plays at a position where they were already solid. That's a lot of teams that are kind of middling already from the jump. If you look at what Miami is doing, yes, they only have 6 senior players on the squad right now. But if Sebastian Blanco stays healthy and can recapture a semblance of his MLS level, I think he's a excellent player that can really run the show down the middle. And adding Bolu Akinyote and Jonathan Ricketts, like those are rock solid defenders, or at least presences in the back half that this Miami side simply never had last season. There are some unknowns, obviously, but someone like a Ricardo Rivera, who's put up bucket loads of goals for Puerto Rico, is nothing if not fascinating at the number 9 spot. If you look at Madoni, the new manager's experience with Boca Juniors and River Plate, like he's going to command respect. And there's obviously a very Argentine tint to the way the team is going right now. I don't know if that's going to work out, but if you can give me like 10% odds that this team pulls it together and squeaks in, I'm buying what they're selling.
I mean, I want to throw out there, this is like the one we did 2 years ago where I was a year early, but I said 10% on the Vegas Lights finishing in a playoff spot. I get a feeling that you are a year early. I don't disagree, but I feel like you're a year off, but I like it.
I just, and it again, a lot of it is like, is the bottom of the East actually getting better? Not really. So if Miami can be in the mix and make up ground, I think a lot's going to depend on the goalie as well. Like if they get somebody who can really kind of push above their weight, that's going to make all the difference. But yeah, again, that's the point of the 10%er.
All right, here goes. So my 10% prediction is I think there's a 10% chance that Locomotive finishes within 3 points of a playoff spot. I think they will be comfortably out of playoff contention this year. And here's why. They have 21 rostered players as of the 4th of February today. And they are light sort of across all areas of the team apart from defense. Like they have some depth in defense, particularly at center back. They have way too many center backs. Like for my taste, the balance feels completely wrong. They have like in midfield, Eric Calvillo obviously is like the now sort of the old head, but he joins Robert Coronado. Frank DeRoma is sort of the new addition, which I think Frank DeRoma is a very good player. That's kind of it. Like Emi Rodriguez, who was an academy promotion last year, is another player that they have in midfield. And they obviously sent Bolo Akinyote back to Miami. So depth-wise in midfield, they're extremely lacking. And then at forward, they don't have a single rostered forward who had double-digit goal contributions last year. Amando Moreno and Tumi Moshibane are obviously capable of those in previous years, but they never looked anywhere near getting there under either Brian Clairhout or Wilmer Cabrera. And the players that they've added have not had prodigious goal scoring seasons either. In fact, the player with the most goal contributions that they have signed this season is Memo Diaz because of his 7 assists last year for Oakland Roots from wingback. So there is simply not enough goals in this team. There's not enough depth in midfield. And I honestly, it's the roster stuff, especially in a year where you've hired a technical director whose whole job it is to put a roster together separate from the manager. And I'm not seeing Ray Sari's fingerprints anywhere on this team. I'm seeing a lot of Wilmer Cabrera because it's a lot of RGV guys and a lot of guys connections with. And really the only Ray Sari stuff is is some of the LA2 players that he tracked apparently back in the day, who, played for like DeRoma. So, and Quezada. So I think in general, this is I think we could just be blunt and say that this is a League One roster at this point. There are certainly very good players on this team who are now at least 1 year removed from their last good season. And I think it will take some doing for this team to compete in a West that has a lot of teams with a lot of good players on them that are put together much better than this roster.
It's kind of shocking to me that this team was so utterly devoid of a good number 9 last year. and they decided we're loaning in a kid from Honduras and we're signing Frank Lopez, who scored like 7 goals in Miami.
Yeah.
And yes, like the Lopez thing is just a blatant Toros solidarity move, but like I don't know, man. Because this team looked good at stretches down in like the final couple of weeks of 2024. There were
Once they were
flashes.
eliminated from
Yeah,
playoff
right.
contention.
There were like real flashes that okay, if we have a good offseason, the Locomotive could ostensibly like compete for a playoff spot. And I think Memo Diaz was a great move to do initially. And then everything after that has been underwhelming, duplicative at spots that are already deep. Like it just went off the path from there. So I'm a little bit higher on the odds of getting in, but man, this team hasn't done enough quite yet.
If we're talking about old LA2 guys that we want to put in the number 9, does anybody know what Preston Judd's doing right now? Is it too late just to bring him back to the championship?
Honestly, how's that stint in Poland going for oh my god, why am I blanking on his name?
Trejo.
Danny Trejo.
I think he's found a new job at this point that's going to make one of us pretty happy.
Yeah, I was pretty happy about it. Looks great. Awesome. What, Phil, do you not know?
Wait, do I not know?
Does he not know?
Do people know?
Danny Trejo plays for the Birmingham Legion. This is unreal.
Damas and Trejo, what the fuck? Like, sorry, I know it's not really that sort of podcast. Man, you're welcome, chat. Yeah. You're welcome. That's how out of the loop I've been.
That's good stuff, man.
Man, how did I miss that?
That was unbelievable.
Hey, work travel does it to you, man. I know what you're dealing with.
Oh my god. Okay, well, we're officially back, and it's so funny because Kaylor, we've talked about how Birmingham and El Paso have been on these like similar trajectories, like since they're founded. Like it's like they've been on these similar sort of like their fates have been linked, and now I think we have the divergence. This offseason is like the divergence of now you guys get to like we have our destiny and you have yours. I think like to round out the conversation on El Paso, and I know I rip on them because they are my team and all of that stuff. And like, I do think we're reaching the point of their signings that like I'm starting to get genuinely concerned about whether the team is actually like how much longer they're invested in the project. It's really that bad. Like,
well, Phil, I think it's honestly a good question because that's the whole reason Lowry left. Is because he didn't feel like they were invested in the project.
Yeah, I think it was like some Mark like feeling like the El Paso job wasn't high profile enough to like get him the interest in MLS that he was like expecting. But that being said, there was definitely aspects of I would think El Paso, I don't know, and like I don't have a verified number on this or anything like that, but I'm fairly confident that El Paso's payroll at the beginning of last year was one of the highest in the league. Like was among one of the highest in the league, which is crazy to think. But yeah, it was I think the investment's been there historically. I just wonder if last season was like bad enough for them to just be like, okay, we're not gonna pump money into this project anymore.
I mean, it doesn't shock me that they were one of the higher ones from last year just because like they spent a lot last offseason. Like a lot.
I was so high on this team last offseason, right? Like with Moreno and Moshaban, I loved the Brandon Craig loan. Like so many of the moves were firing me up, and then none of it worked, basically.
Nope.
And that's what we get for booing Evan Newton. This is what we deserve.
That's when it all went. No, really, if you deep it, this is all Ange Postecoglou's fault because John Hutchinson. It really started with him. So I will be honest. Like obviously, I don't have any like specific hatred for Spurs, but Ange's struggles have brought me some like modicum of joy because I'm like, really, this is payback for John, for the Hutch era of Locomotive, and this is what he deserves.
How
about,
with Matthias Tell?
Hey,
You want to hit some of those last little 10%ers, John, in the chat?
Oh yeah, we've got a 10% that El Paso announces a stadium plan because Harry's really twisting the knife.
it's a lot less than that, Harry. 10% is extremely generous.
We've got a 10% chance of Birmingham winning the championship, which, hey, having Danny Trejo helps for that.
Definitely.
We've got a question from Phil, you're too deep in, man.
I'm just gonna be surprised about that all season. Every time you guys say like he scores a goal, I'll be like, wait, what the fuck? Like he's at Birmingham?
A question from our friend at the Union Report, good, bad, or otherwise, any 10%ers related to Monterey Bay?
Let me check their roster because there was something I was looking at with them the other day that I was actually kind of bullish on, but come back to me because I had something.
Yeah, as I'm noodling, I will say, I don't know like what metric I put on it for the 10%, but maybe a Monterey player wins Young Player of the Year with a kind of nod towards Xavi Nolati with that one. I think that'll be my 10%er.
I got one, or I got it now, and I need to check his age.
Yeah.
But let's see. Am I good on this? Yeah. Nico Gordon for Monterey Bay. I think there is a 10% chance he wins Young Player of the Year.
Ooh.
I thought he was really, really good coming out of the Birmingham City Academy. He got a little bit of playing time in the championship, and he was really, really good at the next pro level. I think it was a really savvy pickup by Monterey Bay, and I think it's a 10% chance he wins Young Player of the Year.
Yeah, title winner for a very good defensive side in next pro. So he's one of the signings that makes me think like maybe I'm off the mark with Monterey, but yep, overall. So elsewhere, 10% chance no clubs fold next year. I would have told you something similar coming into this year, so it's hard to say.
Yeah.
10% chance of a Cam Lancaster Golden Boot, so I love that people are staying positive while I'm not. We've got the nice Nicholas Murray 10% chance of doing a Jaeger Player Shield League title treble, which feels about right. I guess it would have to be a championship team because you really struggle to see a League One side going the distance in Jaeger, but nevertheless.
Yeah. 10% on last season in Omaha for Union Omaha Stadium in flux. We didn't really talk about the stadium situation.
Yeah.
Where I need someone to really get, because every stadium situation I don't know how it works. This is where I'm just not an economist. Is that the word? Like, I just don't understand how the money does and does not flow. But basically, it seems like another project is actually being built there, and they're being kicked from their lot. I don't think it's going to cause Omaha to leave because they do seem very set on this project, and I trust Gary, Mr. Green, to get this done in some way. I don't know. What do y'all kind of know about this stadium situation going on for Union Omaha?
I mean, I think you've kind of summed it up pretty nicely. The other thing is that like they've made it clear they're actively looking for alternative sites and got a couple in mind already. Is it a setback? Of course, like this naturally is going to add some red tape and some extra hurdles in terms of the groundwork you need to lay. But Omaha is so committed to the project overall that even if it's a push to 2027, that's probably not that bad of a thing to see there. So does it stink? Yes. Is it concerning? No.
I mean, in other stadium news, we got official renderings for Detroit City's proposed venue as well, which looked pretty decent.
Yeah, I enjoy seeing that. I'm I'm very excited to see what comes of the Detroit City Stadium project. I think it's going to be fun. I hope that they start breaking ground soon. And if that is my wish for any of these teams, the moment you announce it, just go ahead and get the golden shovel and just start digging tomorrow. Just do it. It's the only way I'm going to ever believe it's going to happen.
Well, Indy did a ceremonial groundbreaking, and we saw how that turned out.
Yeah, well, this is true. All right. Any final thoughts from us for the night?
I like the Richmond Kickers kind of rebrand.
There's a lot of people who hated it. I don't get it. I don't understand the hate. I understand like wanting a little bit more Roo. You want a little bit more Kangaroo. I do, but I like it a lot.
I think the secondary logo is great, the Roo secondary. The word mark or whatever, the interconnected letters is fine, but they make up for it by adding the kind of navy blue back in. Like, I like having that, especially as somebody who's like got a color-coded spreadsheet. You can't have Richmond be in red and white and Texoma be in red and white. Like, I needed a little bit of blue in there. So kudos to the Kickers for fixing this up.
And I think it was Mike Pendleton on Blue Sky who did a really good mock-up of the Kickers and the outline of their old shield. I think my only gripe with it is that it's another roundel, and that's just it seems to be the default kind of template for it. But overall, I think it's a very solid rebrand.
Yeah, that was kind of similar vibes. I like the old school feel to it. I think like the word mark for the words on the crest is a little bit like Canva for me, but I think like the and it being round versus like they obviously had a very unique shaped kit, and it was like reminiscent of a sort of an old era of US soccer, and I get why they looked at it as well for that same reason.
I just look at the old Kickers crest, and every time I look at it, I just can't help but just seeing Gio and saying that none of those shots are on target. And I just can never unsee it. Ever.
It's really good.
Any other USL thoughts?
Nah.
I guess I got to watch the Legion friendly this last week. And technically no shots on target, although here's a gripe I have. If a defender clears something that's clearly going in, it's not a shot on target. Yes, it was. That's not a block shot. That's not a block shot. It was saved. It was on target. A block shot is like, hey, I shot from the top of the 18 and they were right in front of me. That's a block shot. But anyway, I digress.
I think it should be a block and a shot on target. Can I just throw that out there?
I'm fine with that. I am totally fine with that. But the idea of I cleared this off the line, clearly it wasn't going in. Yes, it was. That defender was not there. It was going in.
Okay.
It's a shot on target.
For that. This is a good take. Go listen to Kaylor talk about the Legion also. It's good stuff.
They're fun. They're a fun team. They're just – it's constant pressing, and I think it's like a wing. Thank you, Nicholas. I appreciate it. I think I figured out their press. I think it's like anytime they get out into the wings, if their wing back or winger gets the ball, they try to press them to the touchline, because I could not figure out what in the world their press system was for such a long time because it felt random. But I think that's it. It's super exciting. And also Turnbull is so good.
Any new attacking signings that you're particularly excited about?
There was this there's this college guy, Dorado, I believe.
Yeah.
He's the biggest one, I think, from the offseason personally. No,
I haven't heard of any others. So
yeah, and it's funny, his last name, Dorado, is like that movie, Rodel Dorado. I'm sure that's the only like movie reference you can make of any of our attacking players that we've signed.
Yep. That makes sense. Sounds good. I'm excited for you, man.
I hope he's good. Granted, I will say Luka Dorado scored like 8 million goals at UCF, so he's gonna be good.
It's like 61 goals in 69 matches at the college level. It's kind of crazy. I think he broke Cal Jennings' record there, which not a bad person to be lumped in with.
Mm-hmm.
So final thoughts for the night. I guess because we kind of got out of order, weirdly enough, but we'll go John.
Okay. So the other night I watched the movie To Live and Die in LA, which has traditionally been hard to stream. And it's like Willem Dafoe. It's directed by William Friedkin, who did The Exorcist. Good movie. But the score, because this is the 1980s, is entirely done by Wang Chung. And so I've just been hammering the Wang Chung tunes this week, and it's, I'll tell you what, lifting my mood.
Love it.
More than just a one-hit wonder, folks.
Ryan.
Yeah, so still kind of on 2025, just to start checking off more movies that I have on my list but haven't seen. So earlier this past weekend, I watched Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, which always a great time, and a movie that I had on my list for a long time, just as a previous Best Picture nominee that I wanted to see. So glad it was on HBO Max.
That kind of like wire action stunt work is insane. Like you never see anything like that in American filmmaking. Yeah, real fun.
It's legit.
Phil?
So recently, after I got back from one of these work travel trips, I was like, I told my wife we were gonna do a movie night, and I was like, I'm feeling Nolan. I need some Nolan. But she was like, we can watch Nolan as long as I pick the movie. And we actually watched Tenet again, which I have not watched since it came out. And Tenet is an awesome movie as long as you take the scientist's advice in like the like second or third scene of the movie when she tells the main character, like, don't try to understand it, just feel it. Like there's all this time forwards and backwards stuff going on, and objects are moving forwards through time and backwards through time, and she's like, don't think about it too hard, like just feel it instinctually. And it's just it is like an extremely well-made movie that makes like no sense at all, but it is just enjoyable because the vibes are so good. But yeah, it's one of those where as long as you just don't think about it that hard, it's very enjoyable.
When Aaron Taylor Johnson comes in and starts talking about like we need to do an inverted pincer movement, like that lives rent free in my head, man. That's my favorite thing in the world.
Yeah, the inverted pincer movement. I feel like there's got to be some way we work this into a tactics show this year.
Yeah, so my two goals are figure out how to make this blue sky friendly lengthwise and work in inverted pincer movement.
See, I figured this is an off air thing, but this is a good thing for people to hear. If you are used to the tactics show, it's going to kind of have to change. Yeah. And we're not really sure how, because I tried uploading my corner kick tactics thing from Blue Sky. It not only has to be less than a minute, it has to be less than 50 megabytes for
your clip was only 55 seconds, I want to say. Yep. And I was paying close attention to this because I was trying to scout this out.
It has to be lower than 50 megabytes. Mine was 75. Couldn't upload.
Yeah. So folks, we're trying
240p. That's as high as we can go.
Well, hey, Twitter is canceling me apparently with the copyright requests. So I don't know what's up with that. Yeah.
Wow.
Rest in peace.
Snitches.
Yeah. I know. Yeah. Nicholas.
Oh, what was it? You were talking about like the time stuff. There was I forget
temporal pincer movement. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Well, I mean they inverted time, whatever. Yeah. Temporal pincer movement. Yeah. So that's what now that will be a challenge to work into the tactics show.
There was someone was telling me, like, whenever you're watching movies, like there's different types of like time, and it's like what was it? It was like interstellar time travel and Back to the Future time travel. Which one affects the outcome? Like if you go back and like kill your mom, you're dead. But the other one, it's like, oh, it's just a different universe. And honestly, I haven't been able to unsee time travel movies the same way ever since, which was just really fascinating.
Or the third option of Prisoner of Azkaban, time travel.
which is just breaks everything. Time travel.
Yeah.
Who would have
The
thought J.K. Rowling wasn't doing much thinking?
right.
Shocker.
The last thing I'll say on Tenet is just I love the idea that on a zoomed out scale, basically the two big blockbuster movies that Nolan did back to back were Interstellar and Tenet, which is essentially, if you zoom all the way out, the concept is Interstellar. What if future humans saved us by like essentially traveling back in time? And Tenet is, what if future humans tried to kill us traveling back in time? And I just love that idea of him just whatever big brain being like these concepts and just doing two movies that are completely different, but with essentially just the exact opposite concept.
Let's see. My final thoughts for the night. So my wife has been really sick, so we've been kind of sleeping different places because I don't want to be sick. And so I kind of finally bit the bullet and I bought the $9 subscription to use StatHead on Baseball Reference, and it has been just my life is a wormhole. It's awful, but it's so worth it. So
I love that. What a great website.
it's so good. It's so good. I mean, right now, if I could share I guess I could share my screen, but I'm not going to. My 3 tabs that are right beside this, because as soon as we get off, I have Baseball Savant, Baseball Reference, and StatHead all ready to go. I have just been
Beautiful.
just way too deep. So, yeah. Well, hey, thank you all so much for watching and listening. It has been a blast to get the gang back together. Phil, it's good to see you again. So thank you all so much for watching. We really could not do this without you. Thank you for sharing. For people who want timestamps, by the way, I do see the comments, and I should say this up front and not at the very end, but here I am. As far as I know, you cannot add timestamps to a live stream that's been uploaded on YouTube. So if you are someone who wants to see more segmented things, I'm uploading this by videos now. So I am just making standalone videos for this. So if you want to just watch certain segments, that's going to be done like that. It may take a couple of days because I have a life. So that it may take a little while, but it will eventually happen. So I will include to do that at the beginning of next episode. Someone remind me. And yeah, I appreciate you all. Thank you so much for listening. And for the final time of night, first and final time of night, here's Alan's voice.
Thank you for watching another episode of the USL Show.
The USL Show is now proudly part of the Protagonist podcast family. Please go to protagonistsoccer.com to check out more work. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see everyone again next time.